Good afternoon, welcome to NMS. So the biggest factor that people don't take into consideration when you're training heavier, okay, is that there's going to be a lot more recovery time. So the longer you train, the harder you have to train, the closer you hit failure on all your sets, on every single workout, and the more weight you lift, the greater the recovery time. And these things actually add to the amount of time it takes to recover from each workout. Now, a lot of people talk about frequency in training and they're saying, you need to train 2 times, 3 times a week. Works great when you're a beginner and you're not lifting as much weight. Certainly not able to generate the amount of intensity that you do when you get older. But as we get older and as we become stronger, okay, now I'm 51, so my recovery time is going to be longer because I'm older. Okay, my recovery may be longer because maybe my testosterone is not the same as it was when I was in my 20s. And I'm lifting some pretty decent weights here. Okay, it's not super strong, but it's still a lot of weights, doing reps with it. And that sort of thing increases your recovery time. And then you add to that the fact that I do other squats, lunges, and leg extensions with this workout. You're not going to be able to do that 2 times a week. Not at my age, certainly not the intensity I'm training at. But one big factor I did which made me more successful at putting on more muscle when I got to around the age of sort of 21, 22, is I went to a one-time frequency type of training. And as soon as I did that, I started putting on weight quicker, I started putting on muscle quicker, I started getting stronger quicker, and my decent weights went up to like lifting some ridiculous weights, over 200 kilo squats and deadlifts over 250 kilos and bench presses in the 140s, 150s for reps, dumbbell presses at 60s. I got strong because I was giving my body the recovery. Now, if anyone's aware of Dorian Yates, and a lot of people go and say, his training is rubbish and he got multiple injuries. Yeah, that is true. But most of his injuries came at contest times, so it's probably when he was a bit sort of depleted that he wanted to keep training hard and he got his injuries. But the biggest factor that people don't take into account is that he was one of the biggest bodybuilders of the time, certainly bigger than even Ronnie at the time. And what he was doing at that time was he was doing something that most people weren't thinking. He was cutting back his training volume rather than adding to it. So his intensity was picking up, so his volume was dropping down. So he went from doing, 3-day workouts, 3-day splits, that is, to 4-day splits. And rather than training maybe 3 times in every 5 days, he now trained everything over 4 days and did it over 7 days. So in other words, he was training everything once a week. And because he did that, he then got bigger and better every year. Okay, whereas a lot of guys stay the same every year because they're not looking at their training and thinking, well, what do I need to do to improve? I'm training as hard as I can. Well, maybe you're training too much. Maybe if you cut back your volume, maybe if you cut back your intensity, you would actually start improving more. Now, a lot of people do this thing, especially with contest prep, where they will increase their volume and their intensity during contest time. I don't know why you would do that. Your body is now struggling to recover because you're giving it less food. So why would you, at this time, decide that it's a good idea to train even longer and even harder? And then injuries happen because of that. So the biggest factor with contest prep is your diet, okay? Now, in order to go and increase your calories burnt per day, rather than increasing your volume and your intensity, maybe you do more low intensity cardio, which then burns more calories, but doesn't have the same recovery as maybe doing more sort of strength training. So you've got to keep this in mind, guys. Strength training is a stimulus, okay? We're not marathon runners. We're not trying to go and increase the amount of time we're doing the weights. In fact, I try to do as little as I possibly can to get the best results I can possibly get out of it. We're not sports like tennis where you might be playing, a 4 or 5 hour match and your match fitness is crucial. We are trying to build the maximum amount of muscle with the minimum amount of training and the maximum amount of intensity that we can muster, okay? And the other thing that you got to keep in mind is whilst the muscle may be able to recover, your joints and your tendons actually take longer to recover because they don't have the same blood supply as your muscles do, and therefore it takes longer. So most of your injuries are going to be tendon injuries or potentially ligament injuries, or potentially cartilage damage, okay? So if you keep that in mind, cut back your volume, increase your intensity, you'll probably get better results. And make sure that you're getting your 8 hours of sleep and plenty of protein, which we can go into in other videos. Like, comment, share, guys. This video is here to help you. Try to support me more. I'll put more content up. If you've got any content that you want to know about, any sort of factors within weight training and cardio that you want to know about, or nutrition, send me a comment and I will do a video on it. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.